Welcome back to The Pain Game, and with the next Riyadh season event upon us, me and the lads, we're going to be live in the studio. It's going to be emotional as always, and the main event, one of the best fights we've seen in a long time, Beterbiev versus Bivol, they're doing it again. Lads, what did you learn from these two lads in their last fight? What did you make of it?
You know, I have to say one thing for sure is Beterbiev is the truth. He's exactly who he said he was. And, yes, he didn't get the knockout in this one, but it was his fight. And I think Bivol tried to play Beterbiev at his own game, wanted to outman him, outmuscle him, and let him know. I think he wanted to he was looking for some dominance. And I was surprised with the fight that he had. And that's why he didn't win. He couldn't even argue. He couldn't even argue with him in the face-to-face and say, look, he knows what happened in that fight. Beterbiev was, for me, is the clearer winner than the two.
Do you mean to say that Bivol came after him? Because I felt like early on, Bivol was expending a lot of energy trying to sort of be active and kind of in his face, but in and out as best he could. But as he tired a little bit, he went on the back foot and he played a fairly defensive style, I thought. Travis, what did you make of it, mate?
So when I was watching the fight the first time round, I honestly thought Bivol had Bivol up. Mm-hmm. Now, I think the early rounds, Bivol established outside boxing and he knew he could kind of keep Beterbiev at a distance, whilst Beterbiev was giving constant pressure and he kept him at a distance. Obviously, the level of energy he was expanding to keep Beterbiev on the outside, that can't last 12 rounds for anyone. Yeah. Even Floyd, when he fought Canelo, at some point had to stand in the pocket. Bivol is educated enough to know that I'm going to have to fight you at some point. So I'm best to do this earlier in the fight to establish that while I have a better tank of energy, rather than to try and start this in round 10. So that's why I'm not mad at the fact that he tried to stay in the pocket sometimes and try and find a way to keep Beterbiev honest, because at some point you're going to have to. Whereas I think now, after that fight, he knows, okay, let's be real. I can't sit in the pocket with this guy for any amount of time, because those shots that Beterbiev was landing were potentially KOs. So now I think we're going to see a really hyper, energized Bivol that knows, all right, it's got to be 12 rounds of this or I'm going to lose.
Yeah. Joey, what do you think that each fighter did particularly well? What impressed you about each guy? I've got to be honest,
until I think probably the latter stages of the fourth round, I wasn't very impressed by Beterbiev at all. I thought that Bivol, I remember looking over after about 3 rounds had been completed and thinking, I think Bivol might whitewash this, he had a really good start in the fight. Beterbiev not only couldn't get past that sort of lead hand of his, he couldn't find his own range either. He was walking forward, but in as much as you're making him work, he's also landing a lot of clean shots on you, a lot of clean straights, and maybe these will start to have their effect down the line. Obviously, after that point, I thought Beterbiev really started to pick it up, and going into the final 2 rounds, I had it completely level. Bivol's corner were maybe giving him the indication that he was in front, because does anyone remember, I think it was round 11, it seemed to me like Bivol took a round off, which I found really, really strange, really strange.
In round 9, Bivol had a very, very strong round, and for the following 3 rounds, Bivol basically was quite and it was almost like he had kind of thought he had won the fight. At the same time as that, I mentioned on the stream that I think that Bivol weathered storms in times during the fight that maybe we picked up on them, and maybe, your hardcore boxing fans have picked up on, but the casual audience might not have really realised that he had weathered a storm in that moment, because he showed such a good poker face and ring craft and whatnot. But I do think that had Bivol had even one more dominant round, then I think that's how close this fight was. That's the difference between me going, do you know what, maybe I could give it a draw. In the end, when I scored it and rescored it, I had given it by 2 to Beterbiev. But I think that a lot of adjustments can be made by Bivol. That final 3 rounds where Bivol, you could argue took a round off, or basically just couldn't keep moving to the level, and couldn't keep fighting with Beterbiev the way he had been. And he just basically resorted to not throwing punches anymore. And if you look at the punch stats, I think Beterbiev threw about 250 more punches. I've got them written down. 682 to Beterbiev, 423 to Bivol. Why did he do that? Do you think it was because he couldn't stick to stay competing, or was he just taking rounds off?
There were strange things happening for both of them. But Beterbiev's never had to fight for that long, really. Like, usually the show's over much sooner. But then one thing that he had on his side that was brilliant is he knows how to steal the round. And this is what we was all talking about. I was watching the fight, and you lot probably are right in some place where you say, you know what? It's looked like a Bivol round, but Beterbiev in the last minute, you see him landing. You see him, and then the judges are looking because it's really hard to score how this fight's going anyway. And then he has this last maybe 30, 40 seconds of dominance, which says, well, for me now, that is a Beterbiev round.
Kind of like Usyk does, right?
Exactly. Usyk does that one. Because I was thinking, is there another boxer that really knows how to, you're not sure where that round's going, and he just steals it in the last 40. And Usyk is the perfect example of that. So I think that's what he had to deal with. And I don't believe Beterbiev is saying to himself, because he's usually looking for the knockout, he's going to keep on going to try and find it, where he's never going to feel comfort, where Bivol has won fights similar to that, with that level of output. So he's like, you know, we should be fine right now. Where another guy's saying, well, I'm going to keep going till I get the knockout. So I think that's probably what's going on in their minds.
I think the problem for Bivol is that Beterbiev is clearly the harder puncher, and therefore he has to stay on his bike, right? And he has to be pretty perfect. I watched it back there the other day. I was surprised that the level Bivol was on when he was really doing well in that fight was probably, for me, a little bit higher than Beterbiev in terms of, like, you'd see 30 seconds of him, you'd go, you're actually arguably more skillful here than Beterbiev. But your body is just not able to do what you do well for as long a period within a round. So you'd see him have a great 30 seconds, but Beterbiev is just keep coming for the other 2.5 minutes. And I'm like, you know, were you a bit more eye-catching at times? Yeah. And I wasn't like, wow. But I can't ignore the other 2.5 minutes of this round that Beterbiev is coming after you. And there's times where Bivol didn't want to know. And on the eye, and you know, we can all be judges, but like, if one fighter is literally just covering up, not throwing punches, and doesn't want to know, and the other fighter's like coming after him, at no point did Beterbiev look like that in that fight. At no point did Beterbiev look like, I don't want to know. Every time Bivol started swinging, Beterbiev started swinging too. He wasn't backing off. There was no submission from him. And I think that is basically, Bivol needs to stand his ground this time a bit more. And it's a dangerous thing.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be the...
It kind of reminds me of the Fury-Usyk fight in some respects, of that, like, you're going to have to take more risks. Maybe not stand your ground. Maybe you're going to have to try and do what you did longer, but there's more risk taking needs to be happening from Bivol.
I honestly think the fight that he should fight is literally Mayweather-Canelo. Like, how he fought is like, I'm in front of you enough to keep you honest and keep this exchange here, but defensively, I'm so on point. None of your success is starting to amount to anything. When you look back at the fight, when I watched it back, I didn't leave the rewatch thinking that Bivol won, because at no point did I feel like Bivol was dangerous to Beterbiev. I felt like Bivol was winning rounds and he was point scoring in a boxing match. But as far as a fight was concerned, this man looks like he's going to knock you out every time he gets success. And that's the frustrating part, that Bivol's going to go into this rematch like, yeah, I'm going to be able to stand my ground. Yeah, I might have to do a bit more to try and keep you honest, but I know if you get any chance against me, bro, I could go sleep. And that's the part where it's like, when you watch those rounds back, it makes me think of Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler's fight. Because the same thing about the round stealing that KG's talking about for Beterbiev, I kind of look at it the other way, where I'm like, a different judge can watch that round and feel a different thing, because it comes down to what you like. It's like when you hear fighters talk, like legends talk about Mayweather, and they say, I can't stand that style of boxing. I want Pacquiao. I prefer Pacquiao. And if they were to judge those rounds, the fact that Pacquiao was swinging for the hills would be a 10-9 round as far as they're concerned. Whereas the defensive boxing ability isn't going to be so fantastic. And I think when you watch Beterbiev, I'm like, the fact that you almost knock him out each time you land is enough to win the round. So Bivol has got a mountain.
Just because one man won, and therefore you don't feel that he needs to change specifically, I think we'd all agree that Beterbiev can do what he did first time round. He doesn't need to change his style. It also doesn't mean that the loser in such a close fight needs to change. It can just mean they need to refine, they need to be better. So I wouldn't say that Bivol does need to change what he does. He just needs to improve in those margins, do better at it, and maybe in terms of round management, maybe focus a little bit more on reserving the energy in that first minute and 20 seconds of the round and going a little bit harder in the last bit of the round to really stomp his authority on certain rounds, because there were swing rounds in the fight. And the only other thing I would say is, when you were talking before about, I think, Brian, you said you can't ignore the fact of his age, and it's something that we made a big point of going into it. Beterbiev's age, obviously, Bivol's got the youth on his side, but I'll tell you what, inactivity is what Beterbiev had going against him in that first fight, as well as knee surgery.
And an injury.
So I think that now, having a fast turnaround, providing he hasn't picked up any niggles, injuries, anything serious in camp, I think that we'll see a better Beterbiev. I think we'll see a better version of both fighters in this one.
One thing I think that Beterbiev can do better, and he does seem to want to do better when you watch his interviews, he doesn't seem satisfied. His coach, I watched an interview with him, and he was like, we're not happy. We want to get this guy out of there. We always want to go for the knockout. You've seen them screaming for the knockout later in the fight. There's a glaringly obvious thing that they didn't do that they could do in this fight a lot more, and that's body shots, because there was times where those body shots were ripping to Bivol's stomach, and that's how you slow the guy down, right? The guy is really quick feet, slow him down, but not just that. One of his other best weapons that we were all admiring is his defense, his high guard. You know, his hand was so swollen after this fight, not from throwing punches, but from taking punches to the guard, because his guard was rock solid. You got to bring them hands down, and I think Beterbiev needs to work the body a lot early on to try and make sure he can do that. And now, a word from our sponsors. Everyone online needs a VPN, not only to be safe and secure, but also to get access to some sweet, sweet content. And that is where Surfshark comes in, because a VPN is basically like wearing a pair of trousers outside. All the stuff that you want to keep private stays private. And Surfshark helps keep your whole online activity encrypted so you can browse privately and you can block ads and travel the world in one click. And say, for example, you're in the UK, you want to watch the 3 p.m. football on a Saturday, but you can't in the UK. But in Spain and America and other countries like that, you can. And that doesn't just apply to sport. You can change your Netflix location to get better Netflix, or watch things like Hulu and other content from America. And another big help is when you're out and about, if you want to do online banking and you're on a public network, anyone can snoop and have a look at what you're up to. But when you use Surfshark, you can mask your IP so all your traffic is encrypted, which means your personal info stays personal to you. I use Surfshark for all my devices and only on one subscription. You can log into as many as you want, and they have 24/7 support if you need any help. And if you want to get Surfshark, you can click the link in the description or use the QR code on the screen now. And you can get 4 months extra of Surfshark for an unbeatable price. And the best bit is they give you a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there is no risk in trying it out. Just click the link in the description below now, go to surfshark.com/paingame, and you can get 4 months extra of Surfshark at an unbeatable price. So big thanks to Surfshark for the security and that sweet content, but for now, enjoy the video.
You know what's so crazy? When you look at both of these fighters, there's no delusion in how they're approaching it. And this is why the next fight is going to be so exciting. Sometimes you hear a fighter say, look, I never lost that fight. It was all mine, this, that, and the other. Bivol has not looked at this fight. He's probably watched it about, I don't even know, maybe 10 times at least. And he's like, okay, I know what to do. The guy asks him, well, what is it a different fight? And he's like, no, it's serious. It's personal. This has become, you can feel that even though while they're not the greatest of talkers in the world, this has become personal for both fighters. So you can imagine how one guy's coming saying, I'm going to knock you out this time. The other guy's saying, look, well, I'm never going to let you do that to me. Bivol's poker face is absolutely brilliant because everyone else that's fought, Beterbiev has shown that been hurt and ended hurt, you know. This guy looked like you couldn't really tell.
The only thing I think that gave it away is that he just stopped throwing punches for long periods of time, and we were like, okay, you're doing well, but we can tell because you're not putting up enough offense here.
Yeah.
One thing I found really interesting is Eddie Hearn after the fight was raging. I mean, he was acting like this was the robbery of the century.
Yeah.
And I get it, like it's his guy. I thought he went on a bit ridiculous, but I appreciate he loves, he wants to win. But Bivol didn't. And sometimes, when a fighter shows he's really pissed off and he's angry, it kind of shows the fire in the belly. He seemed quite accepting of it. Is that a bad thing or is it good that maybe he knows the reality?
I think it's a good thing.
Where do you think his mind is?
I definitely think it's a good thing, because I think that sometimes you can, if you feel like you've been done wrong by, you can use it as fuel, and you can use it as fuel for your next camp. But I think that Bivol's someone who's the ultimate professional, He feels very composed in his natural self, and it shows that in his boxing style. So I don't think that any sort of negative energy, any resentment from the first fight is going to help him do better in the second fight.
One person who wasn't complaining about the decision was Bivol's ex-wife. I don't know if you've seen the clips that came out after that.
No.
Somebody paid her to go on a fucking live stream, and she's giving it Artur! Like, she's like screaming for Beterbiev. I'm like, imagine your biggest, your undisputed light heavyweight title shot, right? It's the biggest fight, arguably, in boxing in terms of skill level. And here is your ex-wife, the mother of his children, cheering on Beterbiev, delighted in your failure. That doesn't seem to be as big of a thing. I haven't, that's gone very quiet. We haven't seen or heard any. Maybe.
I can tell you on AJ settings, I don't know what's going on, but it's not nice. Like, that's literally, that's exactly what's going on in that one. And cause his friends, like, there's people that's gonna watch that stream, and she's got to explain that stream to the kids when they're older, later.
She's probably already explained it plenty of times. She's willing to go on the internet and do that. She's flagging him off around the house. I'm glad it's gone quiet. She's had her 15 minutes of fame. She can fuck off.
The main thing is, it's not affecting him. If anybody's going to be familiar with her bullshit, it's him. He knows the inside and out.
But let's have it right, though.
Experienced men in this group.
No, but let's have it right, though. Think about the people that can push your buttons, though. And I'm telling you right now, this woman here, probably, like, even though he's a great poker player, but it's like, oh my gosh, she's at it again. So it's something you have to put in the background, because you're fighting someone with a 100% knockout ratio. If it wasn't that guy, he'd probably have a bit more to say, but I can't take any focus off this dangerous man in front of me. Is why we're seeing what we're seeing right now.
Fighting Beterbiev is one of the hardest tasks in boxing, and to have your ex-wife cheering him on is insane. It's like nothing I've seen in boxing, in fact. Let's just finish on this question, gents. The most likely path to victory. How do you, for each guy, we'll start with Bivol, because I think it's quite obvious what we're going to say for Beterbiev. How can Bivol win this fight if he is to do so, in your opinion?
Box his ears off, an absolute clinic. I mean, he's give up 1 or 2 rounds max and position those rounds. So you look at round 4 and then round 9. But every other part of the other rounds, stay on your fucking bike, mate.
He's to do what Usyk did to AJ, essentially. Just stay on your bike, never stop moving.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'd agree. I think that if the fight was to happen tonight and I woke up tomorrow and you told me that Bivol had won and you said, right, how do you think he won? I'd say the same thing. I'd say he probably lost a maximum of 3 rounds, one of them probably being the 12th. But apart from that, boxing his ears off.
But I don't have Bivol winning this at all. The only way I see him winning is if they're forcing the trilogy. Like, they desperately want to see these guys fight again, and we have some different kind of judging. I think this fight here is very much similar, but then with Beterbiev trying to close the show a bit earlier. It's not leaving as late as he did. I think he has to apply a bit more pressure.
He needs to start faster, surely, because as Joey said, he did start slow.
And we'll see what the leg is saying as well, because while it was okay, we couldn't really see all the true injuries, but if he you could tell that his movement wasn't as great as it usually is as well. He's a great counter puncher, and we didn't see, it was tough to see like Bivol throw something, he react and throw his one. We never saw that.
Can I just say, like, I don't think, I'm not saying you're suggesting it, but I don't think there's going to be any case of like dodgy scoring or anything like that to force a trilogy, because financially, as deep as the Riyadh season pockets are, this is a fight for the purists. They're lucky they got the rematch, let alone a trilogy, because this isn't a fight.
It's so true.
We know it when we cover it, boys. This isn't a fight. This is a fight that us as boxing hardcore fans, oh my God, we're watering at the mouth for this fight. But for the casual fan, a lot of the casual fans don't know who Beterbiev is. We've been watching him 10 years and we're still pronouncing his name two different ways. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, I don't think they're going to do nothing dodgy with the scorecards to force a trilogy out of this one. They've already overpaid for the second one. But we're talking about live streaming, we're talking about whatever. We go, the Dubois fight. That's all we say. That's all we say.
Yeah, no, it's true though. It is true.
Oh, snap, you're right.
Because after Dubois did what he did to AJ, his star is just on a bigger level than these two. And, you know, he's an English lad and he's more closer to home, I guess. But look, one more thing I want to say about Bivol before we wrap this up is, I do think he needs to be fitter. You can't have another man throwing 250 punches more than you and throwing so little in the final 3 rounds. Like, he put a lot into those early rounds. He needs to plan the whole entire fight out, just like Travis said there. Much like Usyk does, you know? Like, you have your break rounds, recharge. Does anyone think Bivol wins this rematch?
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, really?
Mm-hmm.
What's the main reason?
Well, I think he's going to be a bit more edgy. I think he's the better boxer out of the two of them, right? I think his all-round skill set is more advanced than Beterbiev. Beterbiev has tremendous power and a lot of other great attributes, but I think Bivol's IQ and all of his whole package is greater in total. I think he's just going to struggle with the power, but I think this time round, he's going to get it right. The gaps, the margins of error where he made mistakes and committed and overcommitted in certain pockets, I don't think he's going to make those mistakes. And I hope his preparation allows him to box his ears.
And I've alluded to it before, you said there about being fitter. I don't think it is a case of being fitter. I think he was fit enough. I think it was a case of him silently weathering a storm. So when that punch output decreased, I don't think that was due to being unfit or not fit enough to be able to have that output. I think that was due to him being hurt and maybe us sort of casually observing it, not realising how hurt he was in those moments. So I'd always back the better boxer to not be caught the second time round with those same shots.
I'm not sure. I'm going to have to leave that one for my prediction. You've given us some food for thought though, lads. Let me know what you lot think in the comments below. Hit the like button, subscribe to The Pain Game, and we'll see you on Fight Night.